Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek today, and I have a bit of a different video, as I'm sure you guessed from all the title and stuff, of that I really want to talk about this book. So this is Starseer's Ruin by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and man, what a book. It is not a secret, I would say, by any stretch of the imagination, that I am a hardcore Lizardmen fan at the very, I'm a Warhammer fan. I like everything in the Warhammer sphere. But if you dive all the way down to the very bottom of that chasm, you will find at the very core, fundamental beating heart of my love for Warhammer, the Lizardmen. They are the best thing in the setting to me between fantasy, Age of Sigmar, 40k, all the stuff. The Lizardmen have always been the thing that I absolutely love the most. But one of the greatest difficulties in being a Lizardmen fan tended to be the, frankly, lack of good material. The vast majority of the writing of Games Workshop is not about Warhammer Fantasy, and even within the Warhammer Fantasy sphere, there is significantly little about the Lizardmen. They only had really 2 books back in the days of true Warhammer Fantasy, featuring very heavily in the second novel of the Thanquol trilogy, which I believe, I think it was the Temple of the Serpent, which that was a pretty good book. It had a reasonable showing of the Lizardmen. You got the perspective of a Slann character that I think was written relatively well. I think it did a good job of showing how Skaven and humans feel about the Lizardmen and how interacting with them is very terrifying and such. But it had very little to do with the it had very little to do with the Lizardmen's perspective. You really only got it from a Slann character, basically in the very first chapter, and then very, very late in the book. There's not a lot from the Slann's perspective. But the second book, which was Burning Shore, was terrible and was actually the first one released. It's the older one. Burning Shore. I wanted Burning Shore to be amazing. It follows a pair of Bretonnian characters that are very, very goofballs as they get caught up in a journey to Lustria. And its portrayal of the Lizardmen is frankly terrible. It is absolutely terrible. So bad. It's awful. It's crazy how bad that book is. It portrays the Lizardmen as idiotic barbarians that don't know what humans are somehow. You even have a Slann that basically knows absolutely nothing about humans. And you have like these skinks that are just beyond idiotic, and the Slann who is so dumb that he nukes his own army without realizing that it would have ramifications. Like, once again, it showcases the Lizardmen being terrifying. The Lizardmen are very, very spooky in the book, and it goes out of its way to show that the Lizardmen are so much more powerful than anything the other cast of characters can even comprehend, where you have an elf on the crew plus a group of dwarfs and then a bunch of humans with a mage, and to say that they are utterly obliterated by the Lizardmen by the end of the book is a grotesque understatement. I won't get into like the super spoilers, but Burning Shore at least did give us the solar system of Warhammer Fantasy. That's actually the first book that ever tried to address it and gave us all of the planets that we know of in Warhammer Fantasy. They originate from that novel, which that's cool at least. But other than that, very, very rarely are the Lizardmen brought up, and never are they focused on outside of those. And even within those books, you never truly had Lizardmen focused characters. So we were basically relegated to our army books, the occasional campaign book, like when we got the Lustria supplement, which was fantastic because it was a whole summer campaign that featured the Lizardmen heavily and was just wonderful. And it was the redesign and kick-ass revitalization of Tehenwin and made Sotek into such an important character. But all of that leads up to Age of Sigmar, Where Age of Sigmar, frankly, as a Lizardmen fan, has been significantly better to me than Fantasy was. Where the Seraphon of Warhammer Fantasy actually get to do things. They are major characters in many of the storylines. We have way more short stories, many of which are pretty decent. One of the very, very first short stories that we got in Age of Sigmar, Beneath the Black Thumb, actually features the Lizardmen, and Lord Croak is kind of one of the main. He's technically an antagonist in the story because it's from the perspective of a Skaven and some Nurgle guys. And Lord Croak is basically a cosmic, horrifying entity that cannot be stopped and just curb stomps everything. And it's hilarious and great. But the closest we got to, I think, a good Lizardman book was there was a Clan Pestilence novel that featured like a Slaanesh character and a Saurus Old Blood and a Saurus Sunblood, which is like a Gorok type character. And it was cute. It showed interactions between the Seraphon and the Stormcast Eternals, and it had the Seraphon as like really cool good guys that teamed up with the Stormcast Eternals, and they were a little weird, but they were able to kind of see eye to eye, and they got along well enough. And it was a fun book. It was a good time. And that was kind of basically it. That was kind of as far as we got. But Age of Sigmar almost had a different problem than the Warhammer Fantasy books did, where in Warhammer Fantasy, the Lizardmen were almost always major antagonists to the main characters of the story, who were these very, very weird, dangerous, terrifying creatures. In Age of Sigmar, they almost made them overly relatable, almost to the point of being human in some ways. And then this book came out. And unfortunately, because of the way that just the internet is these days and GW, I had a really hard time getting my hands on a copy of this book. It sold out pretty much instantly, and then when I did try to buy it from a third party, they ended up taking my money and then never sending the book. Great. But I finally did get my hands on this one. And I finished reading it last week, and it is incredible. I don't think I want to get too heavy into the spoilers when it comes to doing a review, because especially with a book like this, I definitely figured out what was going to happen faster than I think. I feel like it's relatively obvious what's going to happen at the end, but I really... So, okay, I'm going to start by simply saying the book follows a character called Irishi, or Irixi, depending on how you think it should be pronounced. I think if you were to go by the technical pronunciations of Saurian from Warhammer Fantasy, it would be Irishi, but I feel like the author intends for it to be Irixi. But in any event, the book follows a skink Starseer, which is a fairly powerful skink wizard. You know, not nearly as strong as a Slaanesh, but is higher than a regular skink priest. And he has to go out on a mission to go to an ancient destroyed Lizardman temple ship, because, or Seraphon as they're called in Age of Sigmar, as this temple ship was destroyed back at the end of the Age of Chaos, and there is part of a prophecy that needs to be recovered. So the book has you follow Irishi as he goes to try and find this prophecy, to basically put it back together and deliver its components to the Slaanesh character, who you never get the perspective from. I do like that the book kind of treats the Slaanesh as this beyond unknowable entity, to the point it never even gives you its perspective. But furthermore, you have a number of human characters. Perlo and her brother Kenlo are the main ones, who are basically a group of good... they're good people, but they're people, right? They're humans that they know that there's some ancient ruin nearby where there's said to be a potentially significant amounts of treasure and wealth, because they have a journal from an ancestor who talked about stumbling into that jungle and finding some great ruin full of wealth. And so they're like, oh, if we can get in here and we can get some of that wealth and get out, then we'll all be rich and we can like do things we want to do with our lives, instead of just being soldiers in the army who are going to die against hordes of Skaven in Sigmar's name. So you have basically a group of treasure hunters, and then your last character is a Stormcast Eternal named Vale, who is easily in my personal opinion, my favorite Stormcast character I have ever seen in a book. And I have a significant amount of Stormcast characters I really, really like. I love Hamilcar. I love Gardas Steel Soul. I love, like, there's so many good characters among the Stormcast. I always feel bad for them that many people don't seem to give them the chance because they're like, oh, they're just Sigmarines, when I really think they're some of the best written human adjacent characters that Games Workshop has ever produced. But that's neither here nor there. So you have all these different groups working together, and then of course there's a giant Skaven big bad who is kind of a high priest of Clan Pestilence. If you were thinking of it in Total War terms, he wouldn't be a plague priest. He'd be like between that and Lord Skroak. So it'd be like a lord, like a plague pontifex, like a lord level baddie. And this book kind of follows as they all converge on this point and what are the ramifications of it. And this novel is beyond incredible. Not only is it incredibly well written, but Adrian Tchaikovsky does such a good job of showcasing the Seraphon or the Lizardmen. They're the exact same. There's so minute differences that I don't think it matters. But this book does such a brilliant job of allowing you to see heavily from the Seraphon's perspective. You get to not only see from Irishi's perspective, but you also get to see from quite a bit from the perspective of Asaurus Oldblood. And you also get to see quite a bit from a Chameleon Skink's perspective. And the Chameleon Skink is such a good character. But it's not only is it a ton of fun, the humor in the book is absolutely fantastic, but the way it tackles the inhumanness of the Seraphon is brilliant. It ties in so neatly. Me and Andy did a Lorebeards episode that I'm very, 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 very proud of. I think like 85 to 90% of Lorebeards episodes have been bangers. But one that I'll actually link down below in case you've never seen it and you'd like to watch it, and I would really recommend watching it either before or after you read this novel. I think it will add so much to your reading of it. But one of the things we discussed in that stream is the evolution of the Lizardmen throughout fantasy's history, of going from automatons to being cold-blooded creatures that do have emotions. They do have personalities and individuality, but it's through a very unique inhuman lens because they're not human. There's nothing human about them, but they do feel things. It's just not the same as us humans. And Adrian Tchaikovsky, who of course is a phenomenal author and knows better than most how to portray aliens and have them actually be alien instead of just humans wearing an alien disguise, he nails it. Oh my god, he nails it. This book is very, very rewarding to you if you're aware of old Lizardman lore. If you know your old ones, there's some really cool stuff in here. If you know a lot about Skaven, there's some really cool little drops. If you're a big Age of Sigmar head and you know a lot about the Age of Chaos and the openings of the Age of Sigmar, and you know a lot of the struggles, especially in 3rd and 4th edition Age of Sigmar for the Stormcast Eternals, particularly some of the original Storm hosts, this book has so many goodies for you. As some just kind of like quick little things to note, this story manages to make the Lizardmen an understandable group while showing how a Chameleon Skink is very different from a Saurus, is very different from a regular skink, and how they interpret the world, how they see things, how they approach battle and confusion and chaos. And the ultimate thing this book does, which I don't even want to hint at it because I think it's so important to go into this book blind, is that the Lizardmen and the Seraphon are always meant to be the ultimate expression of order. And the thing about order is that it is not necessarily good or evil. It is simply order. It is simply trying to bring the chaos and the randomness and the awfulness of chaos's influence on the mortal realms, or in Warhammer Fantasy's case, the fantasy world, try to bring those things to an end so that the world is in a perfect, ordered harmony. Now, the thing that this book does such a brilliant job of dealing with is how, for many, when you look at something like the defeat of chaos, when I say that there is a way that chaos can be defeated, like ultimately put down, so Tzeentch, Slaanesh, Khorne and Nurgle, and all that awfulness, the Great Horned Rat, Hashut, all of them, that there is a way to genuinely defeat and kill them, and that it was a plan put in place by these unknowable alien things from beyond, the old ones. That sounds like the ultimate good guy, right? That is the ultimate. Defeating chaos, defeating the ultimate big bad should be all that matters. But Adrian does such an amazing job of putting the question to the reader of, well, as a human, what price is too high to you to save everyone? Like, if you had the ability to be the linchpin, the straw on the camel's back, if you were the crux point that if you do a certain task, it will save everyone, or it will contribute, more accurately, to saving everyone. Not in a way that you'll ever get to see, not in a way that you'll ever get to appreciate, so distantly in the future, even if you were immortal or you had descendants living for hundreds of thousands of years, they might not get to see it. But if you undeniably, beyond a shadow of a doubt, had an entity beyond your comprehension basically tell you that if you do something, it will lead to the end of evil, could you do it? And man, I would say like the last 10 chapters of this book gutted me. It does such a beautiful job of making you feel so terrible, because if you could just bridge the gap between certain characters, or if you could help people see things in a way that they couldn't possibly, it's just read the book. Like I said, I don't want to get super spoilery about it. I might do a stream later where I have a chat about it and I get more in depth and get more into spoilers and stuff. But my hope with this video is just that I can convince you to consider picking up the book, whether it's I'll actually have a link down. I haven't talked about this in forever, but I do have like an Audible partnership type thing. This book is on Audible, and it's read by Richard Reed, who is absolutely incredible. He's Cetra the Imperishable from Total War Warhammer. He also did the Infinite and the Divine, which is an incredibly famous and amazing audiobook that I just finished listening to. So I'm going to actually make a review about that here soon. I'd like to try and make just more kind of casual content outside of just like Total War news and blah, 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 blah. So with that, I want to say that this is easily in my top 3 books of all time. And not just because I'm a Lizardmen fan. I want to make that really clear. The Skaven in this book are amazing. If you are a Skaven fan, or especially a Clan Pestilence fan, I think this is probably the best book you've ever gotten for Clan Pestilence. There has been a lot of there's been a lot of attempts at Clan Pestilence when they're antagonists or adjacent and stuff. Probably the absolute best one is Lord Skrulk from Thanquol's first book, Greyseer. But this book is easily as good, and the antagonist is fantastic, of that it allows the Skaven to be silly while also being utterly horrifying, and it shows why Clan what is uniquely terrifying about Clan Pestilence, which is not something I say lightly. The Clan Pestilence villain you face in this book, he wields the Skaven like a weapon in such a brilliant way that it's great. There were several moments where I thought Adrian was going to lean into kind of like Thankful and Bone Ripper type tropes, like Go Trick and Felix stuff, where the Skaven ultimately screw themselves because they do something really stupid. Like, it's just objectively stupid because they're Skaven. That's not this antagonist. This antagonist is very smart, despite having all the Skaven antics. He feels like a character that has gotten as high as he is in the hierarchy of Clan Pestilence, and wields the amount of power that he does because he's earned it. And he's such a fantastic villain. And all of the characters are just super well written. I love every single one of them. The hunter character that, or the oh my gosh, I can't remember what they're called. The Wildercore, there we go. The Wildercore character, who is, oh, she's beautiful. Easily. Perlo is great. I really enjoy Perlo, and she's kind of the heart of the story in a lot of ways. But the Wildercore lady is, I genuinely, I won't say what happens, but I'll simply say when you get to a certain event late in the book where she is at a certain shrine, that scene had me bawling my eyes out. I won't say why, because it'll give it away, but that scene had me bawling. So I will say I cried, I think 3 or 4 times reading the book. It's not hard to make me cry reading books. I'm pretty easy. Yeah. So hard recommend for me. I would give this a full 10 out of 10. There is nothing I would change about the book. Actually, okay, no, I give it a 9.9 out of 10. The only issue I have with this book, from like a really stickler lore nerd point of view, is that the only problem is that the book treats the end of the Age of Chaos like it happened thousands of years ago. But if you know your Age of Sigmar, the Age of Chaos only ended like maybe 150, at like generously 150, 200 years ago, or something like that. It's significantly less than 500 years. And this book will often refer to the start of the Age of Sigmar as like, oh, it's like incomprehensible numbers of years or forgotten number of years. It's like, it's not that long ago. Like, it's a while ago. But if you're like a 100, 200-year-old species, it wasn't that far in the past. So that's the only part I was a little bit like, but for the story they want to tell, I understand why it happened the way it happened. That's the only criticism I would have, is that I feel like Adrian wants there to be like 2,000 or 3,000 years between the start of the Age of Sigmar and when this book takes place, and that's just not the case. But other than that, literally a perfect book. So yeah, hopefully this was at least moderately interesting. Once again, I'd recommend checking it out, whether you want to pick up a physical copy or Audible for a electronic copy, or a audio copy. There we go. There's also ebook versions. I would heavily recommend, if you're gonna get the audio version, do not buy from Games Workshop directly. They grossly overcharge for their audiobooks. Buy it directly from Audible. It is so much cheaper. Or you can use my little discount thingy down below, which will help support what I do here, and you'll get a free Audible credit, which you can use for Starseer's Run. So do let me know if you've read the book, or if you're going to read the book, and if you're someone that has read it, let me know your thoughts on it. But without further ado, that's going to be me done for today. So I will be back soon with my review on the Infinite and the Divine, and then we'll go from there. Oh, also, there is a short story that ties into this by Adrian Tchaikovsky as well. It's a short story you could find on the Black Library website. It's very cheap to get the ebook version. It's like maybe $2 or $3. It ties in very fun to this book. You don't need to read it. It doesn't add that much. It's basically a prequel, so it allows you to see like Erixie's like first major encounter with humanity, and it's more comical than anything, but it does do a very good job of showcasing like how the Seraphons see the universe versus how humans see the universe, and it's a lot of fun. It's very, very hilarious in that book because the way Irixi like tells people apart is hysterical, because to him all humans just kind of look the same. So it's funny. But anyway, that's all I have to say on that, and I will see you around. Thanks for watching.